Emily Clark was hard to miss at the Silver Range, not because she was loud or boisterous, but because of the bright crimson rifle slung confidently over her shoulder, rifle that drew as many curious glances as outright sneers. Among the sea of matte blacks and deep greens, her red rifle was an anomaly, like a single rose blooming in a desert. It glistened under the morning sun, its polished surface catching the light, and for many of the seasoned shooters who had grown up on tradition and routine, it was an insult. "This is a shooting range, not a fashion show," one grumbled, eyeing Emily's weapon with thinly veiled disdain. "Looks like a toy," muttered another, barely concealing a smirk. Emily didn't flinch. She had heard every snide comment before. The whispers behind her back, the sideways glances, the doubts packed tightly in the air. To those men, to most of the community at Silver Range, she was just a girl with a flashy rifle who wouldn't last a day in the competition. They saw the red rifle and saw recklessness, a lack of seriousness. But Emily saw something else, a symbol, a statement, a mark of defiance against convention and prejudice. Silver Range was one of the most prestigious shooting clubs in the country, a place where legends were made and reputations forged in the crucible of precision and skill. It was a place that had long been dominated by men, where tradition was sacred, and anything out of the ordinary was met with suspicion or outright hostility. Emily was an outsider, not just because of her gender, but because she refused to play by their unspoken rules. Her red rifle was the perfect metaphor for her, bold, different, and unafraid to stand out. But beneath the bright finish and her composed exterior was a young woman who had fought tooth and nail for every ounce of respect she had earned. Emily wasn't born into this world of rifles and ranges. Her journey was paved with struggle, sacrifice, and relentless determination. Growing up in a small town nestled against the Rockies, Emily had been fascinated by stories of sharpshooters and precision marksmen from a young age. Her grandfather, a retired military sniper, was her first mentor. He didn't just teach her how to shoot. He taught her how to understand the rifle as an extension of her own senses. He passed down wisdom that went beyond the mechanics of shooting, lessons about patience, focus, and respect for the craft. She said it best. Her grandfather used to say, "A rifle is only as good as the soul behind it." When her grandfather passed away, the red rifle was a gift she bought with her first paycheck at a local factory, a tribute to him and a bold statement to the world that she was ready to carry on his legacy, but in her own way. Emily's dedication was nothing short of extraordinary. Every morning before dawn, she was already at the range, painstakingly analyzing the trajectory of her shots, adjusting for the slightest breeze or temperature change. She spent hours studying wind patterns, altitude effects, and even the humidity, all factors that could turn a sure hit into a miss at long distances. Her fellow shooters saw a flashy rifle and an inexperienced girl, but they didn't see the countless nights she spent poring over ballistic charts or the thousands of rounds she fired in silent practice sessions. They didn't know about the way her fingers would tremble with exhaustion, but never miss a trigger pull, or the laser-focused intensity that would settle over her like a shield whenever she was at the firing line. The Silver Range was about to host its annual long-distance shooting competition, and the final challenge was nothing short of legendary, a 2,900-meter shot at a tiny steel target barely bigger than a dinner plate. No one had hit it dead center in years. The shot required perfect calculations, nerves of steel, and absolute precision. Emily had entered the competition on a whim at first, but now she saw it as her chance to prove everything. To prove that her rifle wasn't a joke. That she wasn't a joke. As the day of the competition drew closer, the whispers grew louder. She embarrassed herself. Why is she even here? That red thing won't save her. But Emily welcomed the doubt. Every insult was fuel for the fire burning inside her. On the morning of the competition, The sun was just beginning to climb over the horizon, casting a golden glow over the rugged hills surrounding Silver Range. The air was crisp and still, an ideal setting for what would be the most challenging test of Emily's life. She arrived early, her red rifle strapped securely to her back, eyes scanning the familiar landscape as if committing it to memory one last time. Competitors were already setting up, their faces serious, their rifles polished and ready. Conversations buzzed with predictions, many openly dismissing Emily's chances. One competitor, a veteran named Jack, approached her with a smug grin. "You sure you want to risk making a fool of yourself? That red rifle won't get you far." Emily met his gaze calmly. "It's not the rifle. It's the shooter." Jack laughed, but Emily could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. As the competition began, Emily took her place among the others, steady and composed. Every eye was on her, every whisper dissecting her every move. The red rifle was no longer just a weapon. It was a challenge thrown down to the entire range. The first rounds went to the more experienced shooters, their bullets ringing out as they struggled with the wind and distance. Many missed the target entirely. Emily watched quietly, studying the shifts in the breeze, the subtle play of light and shadow on the hills. When her turn came, the crowd fell silent. She lifted her rifle, feeling the familiar weight in her hands, the cool metal steady against her cheek. Her breath slowed. Every calculation she had made, every moment of preparation, came into focus. And then she fired. The crack of the rifle echoed through the valley, a sharp sound that sliced through the tension like a knife. All eyes followed the bullet's path, tracking its slow, graceful arc over nearly 3 kilometers of air. The shot landed, not just on the target, but dead center. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the murmurs began. The disbelief, the stunned glances. Emily lowered her rifle, her heart pounding but her face serene. She had done what no one believed possible. The red rifle had spoken, and the range would never be the same again. The moment Emily's bullet struck dead center on the distant target, the air at Silver Range shifted, but not everyone was ready to accept what had just happened. The cheers from some corners were quickly met with grumbles and muttered doubts from others. Among those skeptics were the very people who had mocked her since the day she arrived with her red rifle. Jack, the veteran competitor who had laughed at her earlier, clenched his jaw, his eyes narrowing. His pride wouldn't allow him to admit defeat easily. "Lucky shot," he said loudly enough for those nearby to hear, trying to dismiss the precision of her marksmanship as mere chance. Another shooter, Tim, shook his head and scoffed. She probably used some kind of trick shot or tampered with her rifle. No way she did that clean with that flashy toy. The coaches, who had watched Emily's rise with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, exchanged glances. Some couldn't deny her skill, but their voices remained cautious. "It's one shot," one coach said, brushing off the feet. "We'll see how she does on the next." But Emily didn't care for their skepticism. What mattered was that she had done the impossible. Every doubt that had ever been cast on her skills, every insult thrown at her for carrying a toy of a rifle, had been answered with that single shot, a shot that silenced the naysayers, if only for a moment. Yet the whispers and dismissive glances persisted, casting a shadow over what should have been her moment of triumph. Emily had stepped into a world where tradition and old-school thinking reigned, and challenging that order was never easy. She remembered the first day she walked onto the range, carrying her red rifle like a badge of honor. She was met with smirks, skeptical stares, and even outright hostility. The other shooters had seen her as a threat only because she dared to be different, a woman who wouldn't blend into the background, who refused to hide her ambition or her choice of equipment. One competitor, Mark, had openly mocked her before the competition even started. "You don't belong here," he had said, loud enough for others to hear. "Go find something easier." Emily had smiled then, but inside, the words stung. She wasn't just fighting for a trophy. She was fighting for respect, for acceptance in a space that had long excluded her kind. Her journey to this point had been anything but smooth. Before arriving at Silver Range, Emily had spent years training alone in the mountains near her hometown. She wasn't from a family of shooters or hunters, but her grandfather's stories had planted a seed, a love for precision and discipline. After his death, she poured herself into the craft, determined to prove that skill and heart mattered more than tradition or appearances. The red rifle was her way of honoring him while also carving out her own identity. It was customized, lighter, more balanced, built to suit her style, not anyone else's. And despite the jeers, she refused to paint it black or hide it away. Training had been grueling. Many nights she found herself alone in the cold, adjusting her scope under the faint glow of a flashlight. She studied ballistics obsessively, learning to calculate wind drift, bullet drop, and humidity's effect on trajectory. She mapped out the ranges, memorizing every detail of the terrain. Her persistence paid off, but it also isolated her. The shooting community, tight-knit and often resistant to change, had made it clear she wasn't welcome. At least not yet. But Emily's mind wasn't on the past now. Her focus was on the present and the challenge ahead. The competition wasn't over. The 2,900-meter shot was only the climax, a test of nerves and skill, but many still doubted her consistency. Would she falter under pressure? Would her red rifle, which had become a symbol of rebellion, prove reliable again? She knew that winning meant more than just hitting a target. It meant breaking down walls and shattering expectations. But to do that, she had to keep going. Between rounds, Emily retreated to a quiet corner behind the firing line. She sat on a weathered wooden bench, her fingers gently tracing the smooth curves of her rifle. The red finish gleamed in the sunlight, a beacon of her determination and defiance. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, but her mind raced. "You're good," a voice said quietly from behind. Emily turned to see Sarah, a fellow competitor, and one of the few women in the competition who hadn't joined the chorus of mockery. Sarah's eyes were warm and encouraging. "I didn't think you'd make that shot," Sarah admitted with a small smile. "But you did." That was incredible. Emily returned the smile, grateful for the rare kindness. "Thanks. It means a lot coming from you." They shared a brief moment of solidarity, two women standing strong in a field that often tried to push them down. But Emily knew the road ahead was still steep. The crowd buzzed with renewed interest, the earlier skepticism tempered by awe. Reporters had started to gather, their cameras and microphones focused on the woman with the red rifle. Emily was becoming the story, the underdog who dared to defy the odds. Yet, even as admiration grew, she felt the weight of expectations. The spotlight was intense, and any mistake now would be magnified. The pressure was unlike anything she had experienced before. Jack approached again, this time less hostile, but no less competitive. "You got lucky once," he said, folding his arms. "Can you do it again?" Emily looked him in the eye, steady and unflinching. "Watch me." The rest of the competitors watched too. The game had changed. Emily was no longer just the girl with the red rifle. She was a force to be reckoned with. As the competition progressed, Emily's confidence grew. Every shot was a test, not just of skill, but of will. The range that had once mocked her now watched in anticipation, waiting to see if the woman with the red rifle could continue to silence the doubters. She thought about her grandfather, often during those moments. About his quiet strength and unyielding belief that she had what it took. She wasn't just shooting for herself. She was shooting for every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the hills. The wind shifted unpredictably, testing even the most experienced marksman. Emily adjusted her scope, calculated the variables, and steadied her breathing. Her red rifle, once a symbol of mockery, was now a symbol of hope, proof that skill, determination, and courage could break barriers. The skeptics might still doubt, the whispers might continue, but Emily knew one thing for certain. She wasn't here to play by anyone else's rules. And she was just getting started. Emily's victory on the 2,900-meter shot wasn't just a stroke of luck. It was the result of months, no, years of preparation, precision, and unwavering focus. But the competition was far from over. The next challenge loomed ahead like a mountain waiting to be climbed, and she knew she couldn't rely on a single shot to prove herself. If she wanted to silence the critics forever, she had to make every moment count. After the buzz of the initial success died down, Emily retreated to her private corner behind the firing line, away from the crowd and their whispers. Her hands cradled the red rifle like an old friend, its familiar weight grounding her in the swirl of adrenaline and nerves. She took a deep breath and reminded herself that preparation was the only path forward. Her mind raced back to all the hours she had spent learning the secrets of long-range shooting, studying ballistic charts, weather patterns, and the subtle behaviors of the wind. At distances like 2,900 meters, a bullet's journey was a complex dance with gravity, temperature, wind, and even the rotation of the earth. One miscalculation, one overlooked detail, and the shot would veer off target by meters or worse, fail entirely. Emily knew that success at this range required more than just raw skill. It required meticulous planning, calm precision, and a deep connection to the rifle. The red rifle wasn't just a weapon. It was a finely tuned instrument, customized for her exact needs. She had spent weeks refining its balance, adjusting the scope for clarity and precision, and enhancing the trigger sensitivity so every shot could be smooth and controlled. Her eyes traced the grooves of the barrel, the polished finish, the delicate adjustments on the sight. Every component was designed to give her the edge, to make the impossible possible. But the most crucial part of her preparation wasn't physical. It was mental. Emily had learned early on that the greatest enemy of a sharpshooter was doubt and distraction. The mind could betray you faster than the wind could shift. She practiced breathing techniques to steady her nerves, meditation to maintain focus, and visualization exercises where she imagined the perfect shot unfolding in slow motion, every detail clear and precise. Tonight, like every night before the competition, she would rehearse the shot in her mind, the wind whispering through the trees, the bullet arcing perfectly over the hills, the satisfying thud as it struck the target dead center. The weather was an unpredictable opponent in itself. Today, the range was calm, but tomorrow's forecast showed shifting winds and a slight rise in temperature. Emily pulled out her weather app and scrutinized the numbers, cross-referencing them with her own observations. Her grandfather's lessons echoed in her mind. Always respect the wind, Emily. It's never constant. It speaks if you listen. She had spent countless evenings on the range, feeling the subtle shifts in the air, learning how to adjust her aim to account for the invisible forces tugging at her bullet's path. Today, those lessons would be tested like never before. Emily's strategy was clear. She would approach the next shot not as a gamble, but as a carefully calculated execution. She adjusted the scope to account for the wind's direction and speed. She lined up the target in her sights, calculating bullet drop and drift. Her fingers tingled with anticipation, steady as steel. Despite the pressure, Emily felt a calm wash over her. She had prepared for this moment for so long that doubt had no place in her mind. The red rifle was an extension of her will, her focus, and her determination. As she double-checked her equipment, the range around her buzzed with activity. Competitors were strategizing, murmuring about wind patterns and shooting angles. Some glanced at her, curiosity replacing earlier dismissiveness. Sarah, the fellow female competitor who had offered her quiet support, came over again. "You're ready," Sarah said simply. "I can see it." Emily nodded, grateful for the encouragement. "Thanks. This next shot is going to be the real test." Sarah smiled. "If anyone can do it, it's you." But Emily knew that confidence alone wouldn't be enough. She had to be flawless. That evening, back in her small motel room near the range, Emily laid out her gear carefully on the table. She cleaned the rifle meticulously, wiping away any dust or moisture that could affect its performance. She inspected every part, from the barrel to the scope, ensuring everything was perfectly aligned. Her journal lay open nearby, a habit she had developed to track every shot, every condition, every lesson learned. She reviewed her notes from the last weeks, noting how the wind had shifted at different times and how her shots had responded. As she scribbled down observations, a knock at the door startled her. It was Jack. Emily froze for a moment, unsure what to expect. But instead of hostility, Jack's expression was surprisingly earnest. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "Look, I wanted to say, what you did out there was impressive. I've been shooting for years, and I've never seen anyone hit that shot on their first try." Emily studied him carefully. His tone wasn't mocking, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. "Thanks," she replied cautiously. Jack nodded, looking a bit uncomfortable. "I guess I underestimated you. I'm sorry for what I said earlier." Emily felt a flicker of surprise. It wasn't often that competitors admitted they'd been wrong. "Apology accepted," she said with a small smile. He shifted, glancing at the red rifle. "That thing. It's something else. Maybe there's more to it than I thought." Emily's smile widened. "It's not the color. It's the shooter." Jack chuckled softly. "Yeah, I'm starting to see that." The brief exchange left Emily feeling a strange mix of relief and renewed determination. If she could earn even the begrudging respect of her toughest rival, maybe the path forward wouldn't be so lonely. That night, Emily sat by the window, gazing out at the stars. The quiet of the night wrapped around her like a blanket, but her mind was alive with possibilities. She thought about the journey ahead, the next shot, the challenges waiting on the horizon. The competition wasn't just about hitting a distant target anymore. It was about proving that a woman with a red rifle could stand shoulder to shoulder with the best shooters in the world. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind again. "You have the skill, Emily, but more than that, you have the heart." And that heart was ready to face whatever came next. With a final glance at the red rifle resting on the table, Emily whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, we finish this." The morning sun broke over the horizon like a promise, bathing Silver Range in a warm, golden glow. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, their melodies weaving through the cool mountain air. But for Emily Clark, there was no time for the beauty of the morning. The biggest challenge of her life awaited, and the weight of expectation settled heavy on her shoulders like a storm cloud. Today wasn't just another day at the range. It was the day she would face her ultimate test. The final round of the competition demanded not only perfect skill, but unwavering composure. The 2,900-meter shot wasn't just about hitting the target. It was about mastering everything: wind, elevation, heartbeats, and doubt. And the world was watching. Emily arrived early, as always. The usual crowd had gathered, buzzing with excitement and curiosity. Reporters hovered near the sidelines, their cameras trained on her bright red rifle, a beacon of defiance and hope. Competitors whispered nervously among themselves, many still unsure how to process the young woman who had shattered their assumptions. Jack was there too. He offered her a nod of respect, a silent acknowledgement of the fierce competition they shared. Their earlier conversation had eased some tension, but the rivalry remained. Emily felt a mix of emotions: anticipation, fear, excitement, but beneath it all was a core of calm determination. She had trained for this moment longer than most had been alive. She knew her rifle. She knew her limits. And now it was time to push beyond them. She settled into her shooting position, the red rifle resting solidly against her shoulder. The cool metal felt reassuring, familiar, like an extension of her own arm. Her eyes focused through the scope, narrowing on the distant target, a tiny steel plate barely visible against the rocky hillside. The wind was unpredictable that morning, shifting every few minutes like a living thing. Emily's breath slowed as she tuned into the subtle changes in the air, the whispers of the breeze against the leaves. She adjusted her scope's elevation, factoring in the bullet drop over nearly 3 kilometers. Every variable mattered: the angle, the humidity, the air pressure, even the spin of the earth itself. The crowd was silent, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The stakes were high and the pressure nearly suffocating. Emily's heart beat steadily, each thump a metronome guiding her focus. She recalled her grandfather's lessons, the importance of patience, of trusting the rifle and the process. She breathed deeply, steadying herself as she prepared to take the shot that would define her. Then the moment arrived. Her finger eased gently on the trigger. The rifle cracked with a sharp report that echoed through the valley like thunder. All eyes followed the bullet's arc as it sailed across the vast expanse, a bright tracer briefly visible against the sky. Time seemed to slow. And then, a clean hit. Dead center. The crowd erupted. Cheers and applause rang out, mingled with stunned silence. Emily lowered her rifle, a small smile touching her lips despite the pounding adrenaline in her chest. She had done it again, not once, but twice, proving that her skill was no fluke. Yet even amid the celebration, the pressure intensified. This competition was more than a contest. It was a battleground for respect, for recognition, for breaking barriers. Emily's victory was a beacon for many who had been doubted, dismissed, or overlooked. But it also meant that eyes everywhere would be watching her next moves, waiting to see if she could keep up, if she could truly belong. Jack approached, extending a hand. "You earned that," he said, his voice grudging but sincere. "I've never seen anyone shoot like that." Emily shook his hand firmly. "Thanks. It means a lot coming from you." As the day wore on, the competition progressed through other demanding challenges: rapid-fire sequences, precision shooting from difficult angles, and tests of endurance. Emily tackled each with grit and grace, her red rifle becoming a symbol of unwavering tenacity. Between rounds, she found herself surrounded by reporters and curious onlookers eager to hear her story. Questions about her training, her rifle, and her journey poured in. Emily answered with humility and strength, never losing sight of the fact that her success was built on hard work and the support of those who believed in her. One reporter asked, "What inspired you to bring such a unique rifle to this traditional competition?" Emily's eyes sparkled with quiet pride. "It's a tribute to my grandfather, and a reminder that being different doesn't mean being less. Sometimes it's exactly what you need to succeed." The day stretched into evening, shadows lengthening across the range. The final challenge awaited, the longest, most difficult shot of all. It was the moment Emily had been preparing for her entire life. The crowd gathered around the firing line, hushed anticipation settling over the audience. Emily took her position once more, her red rifle steady in her hands. The wind had calmed, but the challenge remained immense. She closed her eyes briefly, centering herself, drawing on every lesson, every moment of practice, every ounce of determination. With a steady breath, she opened her eyes and aimed. The trigger clicked. The rifle roared. The bullet flew. The target shuddered. A perfect hit. Emily's triumph was complete. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, some standing in ovation. Emily lowered her rifle, her smile radiant, but tempered by the knowledge that this victory was about more than just the competition. It was a statement. She had silenced the doubters. She had proven that skill, heart, and courage could break down even the oldest barriers. And as the sun set behind the mountains, casting a warm glow over Silver Range, Emily Clark stood tall, her red rifle gleaming in the fading light, a symbol of defiance, determination, and the power of belief. Emily Clark's triumphant shot echoed not only through Silver Range, but through the broader shooting community, igniting conversations and sparking debates far beyond the competition grounds. As the crowd began to disperse, the cheers still ringing in her ears, Emily felt a surge of accomplishment, but also a new wave of pressure settling on her shoulders. Victory, she quickly realized, was just the beginning. The day after the competition, the local newspaper headlines boasted, "Girl with the red rifle silences the range," while national shooting magazines featured her as the new face of long-range precision shooting. Social media exploded with clips of her famous 2,900-meter shot, her red rifle gleaming in the sunlight as if it were a mythical weapon of legend. But amidst the praise were undercurrents of resistance. Traditionalists scoffed at the sudden rise of a young woman who dared to break their unspoken codes. Some questioned the legitimacy of her win, while others dismissed it as a mere novelty, a fleeting sensation bound to fade. Rumors circulated about the special nature of her rifle, casting doubt on her accomplishments. Emily was no stranger to criticism. She had faced it all her life, from doubters who underestimated her to those who openly mocked her choice of equipment. Yet, this time, the stakes felt higher. Her success had challenged a deeply entrenched culture, one that valued conformity and tradition above innovation and diversity. Determined not to let detractors undermine her hard-won victory, Emily threw herself into training harder than ever. A red rifle, once a symbol of rebellion, had become a symbol of possibility, and she intended to honor it. Her training regimen was intense. Each morning, before dawn, she woke to the cold mountain air, the sky a dark canvas dotted with stars. She'd practice breathing techniques to steady her heart rate, drill her shooting fundamentals, and study the physics of ballistics with relentless precision. She tracked wind shifts, atmospheric pressure, and even subtle temperature changes that could affect the trajectory of a bullet over long distances. Emily knew the next competitions would test not only her technical skill, but her mental resilience. With growing fame came increased scrutiny, and every shot would be watched, analyzed, and judged. Her coach, a grizzled veteran named Tom Matthews, was both a mentor and a guardian of her confidence. "You've got talent," he told her one morning, as they analyzed her shooting data. "But more importantly, you've got heart. That's what sets you apart. Don't let the noise get to you." Emily nodded, grateful for his steady support. Tom had been a guiding force since she'd arrived at Silver Range, helping her refine her technique and navigate the complexities of the competitive shooting world. Outside the range, Emily's life began to change in unexpected ways. Invitations came from shooting clubs across the country, requests for interviews, sponsorship offers, and speaking engagements. She was becoming a role model, especially for young women who saw in her a reflection of their own dreams and struggles. But with visibility came new challenges. Not all the attention was positive. Some critics tried to twist her story, claiming her success was the result of luck or unfair advantage. Others questioned her place in a traditionally male-dominated sport, arguing that shooting competitions should remain pure and untouched by change. Emily refused to engage in public battles over her identity or skill. Instead, she focused on what she could control: her training, her discipline, and her commitment to excellence. One afternoon, during a regional shooting event in a neighboring state, Emily encountered her most direct challenge yet. A group of seasoned shooters, still skeptical of her rapid rise, openly questioned the legitimacy of her victories. Their tone was condescending, their words laced with doubt. "You got lucky last time," one competitor sneered. "We'll see if you can back it up here." Emily met their gaze steadily. Luck doesn't hit a target 2,900 meters away. Skill does. Her confidence quieted the room, but she knew that actions would speak louder than words. When it was her turn to shoot, she took her position with calm focus. The target was set at a demanding distance, the wind unpredictable. She adjusted her scope, accounted for every factor, and exhaled slowly. The rifle cracked through the silence. The bullet struck the bullseye. Again, whispers of disbelief turned to murmurs of respect. Emily had proven, once more, that her success was no accident. The event marked a turning point. Skepticism gave way to cautious acceptance, and more shooters began to acknowledge her talent. But Emily's journey wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about carving a path forward for herself and others like her. She wanted to inspire young shooters, especially girls, to believe that they belonged in this world, that their dreams were valid, and that innovation was a strength, not a threat. Back home, Emily started organizing workshops and training sessions for aspiring shooters from diverse backgrounds. She partnered with local schools and shooting clubs, sharing her knowledge and passion. The red rifle became a symbol not just of her achievements, but of possibility. It reminded everyone that tradition could coexist with progress, and that courage could redefine what was possible. As the months passed, Emily faced new competitions, each more challenging than the last. The pressure never lessened, but neither did her determination. She was no longer just a competitor. She was a pioneer. Through triumphs and setbacks, the mockery that once greeted her had transformed into admiration. The shooting community was changing, slowly but surely, and Emily Clark stood at the forefront. Her journey was far from over. There were new records to break, new boundaries to push, and countless young shooters to inspire. But no matter where the road led, Emily knew one thing. With skill, heart, and a little defiance, she could silence any doubt. And she would. The red rifle, Emily Clark's trusted companion, had become more than just a tool. It was a lightning rod for skepticism, laughter, and sometimes outright scorn. Its vivid crimson finish stood out starkly against the muted greens and browns of the shooting range, drawing more attention than the sleek, black rifles favored by seasoned competitors. For many, it was an object of derision, a colorful joke in a sport steeped in tradition and conservatism. At first, the whispers began quietly. What kind of amateur brings a red rifle to a professional shooting competition? Some muttered under their breath. It's a toy, not a weapon. Others openly laughed, dismissing Emily's chances of success. The more they mocked, the more it fueled a culture of doubt about Emily's skill, her seriousness, even her place on the range. But Emily never let the noise get inside her head. From the moment she picked up that red rifle, she knew it was different. Not just because of its color, but because of its history. Her grandfather, a legendary marksman himself, had customized it years ago as a symbol of courage and individuality, a reminder that excellence came from belief in oneself, not conformity. The day of the infamous 2,900-meter shot, the atmosphere at Silver Range was electric. Competitors and spectators alike buzzed with anticipation, but many still looked at Emily with skepticism, half expecting her to fumble, to miss, to confirm their doubts. Emily's stance was steady, her eyes sharp as they focused through the scope. The target was a tiny speck far beyond what most shooters dared attempt. The wind teased unpredictably, a sly adversary threatening to veer the bullet off course. Yet, Emily's confidence never wavered. She adjusted her aim, factoring in every detail she had painstakingly calculated. The trigger pressed back smoothly. A sharp crack split the air. For a moment, silence. Then the bullet struck direct, true, and unerring, cleanly hitting the bullseye at 2,900 meters. The crowd was stunned into silence, disbelief frozen on faces that had only moments before mocked the red rifle. Then, slowly, the silence broke into wild applause and cheers. Emily's shot was more than a technical achievement. It was a powerful statement, a dramatic rebuttal to every sneer and scoff. From that moment on, the narrative changed. The red rifle was no longer a joke. It was a symbol of precision, skill, and relentless determination. Emily had silenced the range, not just with a bullet, but with a bold declaration that talent transcends appearances. Even those who had doubted her couldn't help but acknowledge the mastery she displayed. Emily's victory became a legendary tale within the shooting community. Stories spread about the girl with the red rifle who had defied expectations and redefined what was possible. Her shot wasn't just a mark on a target. It was a milestone that inspired countless shooters to embrace their individuality and challenge conventions. Yet beneath the triumph, Emily remained grounded. She understood that every shot carried weight, not just on the range, but in the hearts of those watching. Her rifle's vibrant red finish had become a beacon for those who dared to be different, who refused to be silenced by mockery or doubt. The competition continued, and Emily's performances only grew stronger. Her skills, once underestimated, became the standard others aspired to. But she never forgot that single moment, the shot that turned laughter into respect, mockery into admiration. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come from embracing what makes you different and using it to silence the noise. And so, the red rifle stood proud, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol, a testament to courage, resilience, and the power of a single shot to change everything. Would you like me to continue with part 7? You said, continue right part. 7 full, 1350 words, ChatGPT said. Certainly. Here's part 7. A full chapter around 1350 words, continuing. Emily's inspiring story with depth and momentum. Part 7. Breaking Barriers, the Rise of a New Legend. Emily Clark's journey was no longer just about winning competitions or proving skeptics wrong. She was becoming something much bigger, a symbol of change in a world that had long resisted it. Her red rifle was no longer just a striking piece of equipment. It was a banner for anyone who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told they didn't belong. News of her incredible 2,900-meter shot had spread beyond the shooting community, capturing the imagination of the public. Emily found herself invited to conferences, schools, and events where she spoke about perseverance, passion, and breaking barriers. Each appearance was a chance to inspire the next generation, especially young women, to believe in their potential, no matter the obstacles. Yet, despite the acclaim, Emily remained fiercely focused on her craft. Every day was a battle to improve, to push her limits further. The red rifle was her trusted companion, its weight familiar in her hands, its bright finish a constant reminder of the path she had chosen. Back on the range, the competition was fiercer than ever. Rival shooters analyzed every aspect of her technique, trying to uncover weaknesses. New challengers arrived, some eager to dethrone the girl who had turned the shooting world upside down. But Emily met each challenge with grace and unyielding determination. One particular event tested her more than any before. The National Long-Range Shooting Championship was a grueling contest that demanded precision, endurance, and mental toughness. The distances were extreme, the conditions harsh, and the pressure immense. Emily arrived knowing that this would be the ultimate proving ground, not just for her skill, but for her spirit. The competition stretched over several days. Early rounds were intense, but manageable, with Emily placing consistently near the top. However, the final day brought unexpected challenges. Gusty winds that twisted unpredictably, a biting cold that seeped into bones, and a target distance that pushed even her finely tuned rifle to its limits. As the sun climbed, Emily faced her toughest shot yet over 3,200 meters, the longest she had ever attempted in competition. The range was silent except for the whispering wind and the focused breathing of competitors. All eyes were on her. Emily steadied herself, recalling every lesson, every moment of preparation. Her finger eased on the trigger, the red rifle steady against her shoulder. The rifle fired, the bullet slicing through the cold air in a perfect arc. The impact was clean, the target center struck. A gasp rippled through the crowd. It was a historic moment, the longest confirmed competitive shot ever made in the country, and Emily Clark had done it. Her victory was met with thunderous applause, cheers that echoed across the range. But more than the sound, it was the look on the faces of her fellow competitors that mattered. The respect, the acknowledgement that Emily was not just a flash in the pan, but a true master of her craft. That night, at the award ceremony, Emily was crowned the national champion. She held her red rifle high, a symbol of not only personal triumph, but of breaking down walls that had long kept people like her on the sidelines. The media coverage was overwhelming. Interviews, magazine covers, and television appearances followed. Yet Emily stayed grounded. She knew that with every accolade came responsibility to continue pushing boundaries, to keep inspiring, and to remember the roots that had carried her this far. Her grandfather, now older and proud, watched from the sidelines, tears of joy glistening in his eyes. The red rifle, once a family heirloom, had become a legend in its own right, carried forward by Emily's fearless spirit. But Emily's journey was far from over. She began collaborating with designers to develop new equipment tailored for female shooters, addressing issues of ergonomics and comfort, often overlooked in the industry. She advocated for greater inclusivity and support within shooting organizations, striving to create spaces where everyone, regardless of background or gender, could thrive. Emily also launched a foundation to support young shooters from underrepresented communities, providing scholarships, training programs, and mentorship. Her vision was clear: to build a future where talent and passion were the only requirements for success. Amidst all this, Emily still found solace in the quiet moments on the range, the familiar feel of the red rifle in her hands, and the endless pursuit of perfection. Her story, once mocked, doubted, and dismissed, had blossomed into a legacy. She had silenced the naysayers not just with a single shot, but with a sustained roar of excellence and courage. And as she looked ahead, Emily Clark knew that her greatest achievements were still to come. Because breaking barriers was not just about the past or the present. It was about paving the way for a future where anyone could rise, shine, and make history. Emily Clark's journey was no longer just about winning competitions or proving skeptics wrong. She was becoming something much bigger, a symbol of change in a world that had long resisted it. Her red rifle was no longer just a striking piece of equipment. It was a banner for anyone who had ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told they didn't belong. News of her incredible 2,900-meter shot had spread beyond the shooting community, capturing the imagination of the public. Emily found herself invited to conferences, schools, and events where she spoke about perseverance, passion, and breaking barriers. Each appearance was a chance to inspire the next generation, especially young women, to believe in their potential, no matter the obstacles. Yet, despite the acclaim, Emily remained fiercely focused on her craft. Every day was a battle to improve, to push her limits further. The red rifle was her trusted companion, its weight familiar in her hands, its bright finish a constant reminder of the path she had chosen. Back on the range, the competition was fiercer than ever. Rival shooters analyzed every aspect of her technique, trying to uncover weaknesses. New challengers arrived, some eager to dethrone the girl who had turned the shooting world upside down. But Emily met each challenge with grace and unyielding determination. One particular event tested her more than any before. The National Long-Range Shooting Championship was a grueling contest that demanded precision, endurance, and mental toughness. The distances were extreme, the conditions harsh, and the pressure immense. Emily arrived knowing that this would be the ultimate proving ground, not just for her skill, but for her spirit. The competition stretched over several days. Early rounds were intense but manageable, with Emily placing consistently near the top. However, the final day brought unexpected challenges. Gusty winds that twisted unpredictably, a biting cold that seeped into bones, and a target distance that pushed even her finely tuned rifle to its limits. As the sun climbed, Emily faced her toughest shot yet over 3,200 meters, the longest she had ever attempted in competition. The range was silent, except for the whispering wind and the focused breathing of competitors. All eyes were on her. Emily steadied herself, recalling every lesson, every moment of preparation. Her finger eased on the trigger, the red rifle steady against her shoulder. The rifle fired, the bullet slicing through the cold air in a perfect arc. The impact was clean, the target center struck. A gasp rippled through the crowd. It was a historic moment, the longest confirmed competitive shot ever made in the country, and Emily Clark had done it. Her victory was met with thunderous applause, cheers that echoed across the range. But more than the sound, it was the look on the faces of her fellow competitors that mattered, the respect, the acknowledgement that Emily was not just a flash in the pan, but a true master of her craft. That night, at the award ceremony, Emily was crowned the national champion. She held her red rifle high, a symbol of not only personal triumph, but of breaking down walls that had long kept people like her on the sidelines. The media coverage was overwhelming. Interviews, magazine covers, and television appearances followed. Yet Emily stayed grounded. She knew that with every accolade came responsibility to continue pushing boundaries, to keep inspiring, and to remember the roots that had carried her this far. Her grandfather, now older and proud, watched from the sidelines, tears of joy glistening in his eyes. The red rifle, once a family heirloom, had become a legend in its own right, carried forward by Emily's fearless spirit. But Emily's journey was far from over. She began collaborating with designers to develop new equipment tailored for female shooters, addressing issues of ergonomics and comfort, often overlooked in the industry. She advocated for greater inclusivity and support within shooting organizations, striving to create spaces where everyone, regardless of background or gender, could thrive. Emily also launched a foundation to support young shooters from underrepresented communities, providing scholarships, training programs, and mentorship. Her vision was clear: to build a future where talent and passion were the only requirements for success. Amidst all this, Emily still found solace in the quiet moments on the range, the familiar feel of the red rifle in her hands, and the endless pursuit of perfection. Her story, once mocked, doubted, and dismissed, had blossomed into a legacy. She had silenced the naysayers, not just with a single shot, but with a sustained roar of excellence and courage. And as she looked ahead, Emily Clark knew that her greatest achievements were still to come. Because breaking barriers was not just about the past or the present. It was about paving the way for a future where anyone could rise, shine, and make history. Emily Clark stood at the edge of the firing line one last time, the familiar weight of her red rifle resting comfortably against her shoulder. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across Silver Range, the place where her journey had begun years ago. Today marked the final event of her competitive career, a decision she had made quietly, without fanfare, but with the clarity of purpose that had defined her entire life. Her eyes scanned the distant target one last time. It was 3,200 meters. Away longer than any shot she had taken in competition, but still well within her skill. The crowd, a sea of faces both familiar and new, waited in hushed anticipation. Reporters, fellow competitors, and supporters had gathered to honor the woman who had become a legend. Emily's story was extraordinary, not just because of her unparalleled marksmanship, but because of what she represented. A shattering of expectations, a rewriting of rules, and the unyielding courage to be different. She thought back to the early days, when the red rifle was mocked and sneered at, when whispers of doubt swirled around her like a storm. No one had believed the young woman with the unconventional weapon could rise through the ranks, let alone change the game entirely. But she had one shot at a time. That iconic 2,900-meter shot still lingered in the memories of those who had witnessed it. The moment when mockery turned to awe, when skepticism gave way to respect. It was a shot that silenced not only the range, but the voices of doubt echoing in her mind. And it was just the beginning. Since then, Emily had pushed boundaries farther than anyone imagined. National championships, record-breaking shots, advocacy for inclusivity, mentorship programs. Her impact was felt both on and off the range. She had become a beacon for aspiring shooters everywhere, a living testament that passion and perseverance could overcome even the toughest barriers. As she prepared to take this final shot, Emily's thoughts were calm. This wasn't about proving anything anymore. It was about closure, celebration, and passing the torch to the next generation. She inhaled deeply, the crisp mountain air filling her lungs. Her fingers settled lightly on the trigger. The world seemed to hold its breath. The rifle cracked, a sharp sound cutting through the evening stillness. The bullet traced its path, arcing gracefully against the fading light. A perfect hit. Bullseye. The crowd erupted into cheers, applause rolling across the range like thunder. Emily lowered her rifle, a radiant smile breaking across her face. This was her final mark on the sport she loved, a perfect ending to a remarkable journey. In the days that followed, tributes poured in from around the world. Shooting federations honored her with Lifetime Achievement Awards. Her foundation flourished, helping hundreds of young shooters gain access to training and opportunities they never thought possible. But Emily's greatest reward was quieter, more personal. She received letters and messages from young women and men who had found hope and inspiration in her story. People who dared to dream because she had shown them it was possible. She thought of her grandfather, whose vision had sparked the flame with that red rifle. His words echoed in her heart. Be brave, be different, and let your courage make the noise. Emily had lived those words every day. Her legacy was not just the shots she fired, but the lives she touched, the barriers she broke, and the new paths she paved. One afternoon, as she visited a training center she had helped establish, Emily watched a group of young shooters practicing. Among them was a girl, no older than 10, gripping a bright blue rifle with determination in her eyes. The girl glanced up and smiled at Emily, who smiled back warmly. That moment, seeing the future in those eager eyes, reminded Emily why she had fought so hard. She wasn't just a champion of sport, she was a champion of possibility. Emily Clark's journey began with a red rifle and a single shot that silenced the range. It ended with a legacy that would echo through generations. And somewhere, in the quiet mountains where it all began, the red rifle rested, a symbol of courage, change, and the power of one person to make history.